Hi guys, it's Aoife from Fred VC Died Laughing, and I'm here to do a wrap up of the last 2 weeks with you. I didn't do a wrap up last week because I was away on a hens weekend or a bachelorette party for people in the States. So yeah, I had no time, and then when I got home I was not recovered enough yet to talk to the camera, so I decided, and I hadn't read a lot last week either, so I decided to just combine the 2 weeks into one today. So the last time I talked to you I was just finishing up the Spookathon, and I don't think I had talked about the last book that I had yet to finish on that TBR, which was How to Play Dead by Jacqueline Ward. This followed a woman who kind of runs a kind of local women's shelter in her town, and she obviously helps women who are kind of fleeing abusive partners, who are in bad situations, and she's had to deal with a lot of different men and kind of, you know, taunts and like threats and stuff like throughout her career doing this, because she's helping these women and she's kind of being a shield for them. And then one day she starts getting these like weird messages on this phone that's sent to her, and it basically seems like someone is watching her and someone seems to be like out to get her, and she has like some like, you know, clues about who this could be because there's a few different things going on in the shelter at the time, but things become like more and more ominous, and it starts kind of creeping into like her children and her family life and stuff like that, and she really does not like that. So things kind of start getting a little bit creepier, and then we start seeing these diary entries from this woman who seems to be in this really bad abusive marriage, and like she's kind of, you know, her partner completely controls her, you know, doesn't let her go outside the house when he's not there, walks or drives her to and from work. She does not have a life outside of this relationship at all, and it seems to be really bad. We're trying to connect the dots between our main character and then this person who's writing the diary entries and how they're connected, and things kind of start going from there. This one was interesting enough in that I think it is shown a really amazing light on the work that people do for abused women and families who are affected by abusive relationships, whether it is emotional abuse or physical abuse, or, you know, things like financial abuse as well. And I think in terms of just the services that are provided to families, how important these services are in different towns and how hard it can be to get funded. The author definitely talked to a lot of people working in these situations and with people who've been in these situations. She definitely did a lot of research, and I really appreciated that in the book. The book itself, there's parts of it that I found a little bit lackluster. The ending in particular, I was really wanting this like big showdown, and I felt kind of let down by the ending. And I do feel parts of it were kind of realistic in what would actually happen in real life in terms of how like people might you know, charges and things like that, and women who are in abusive relationships, and how they, you know, they might want things just to go away, they don't really want to think about it, they don't want to have to deal with the police and stuff like that. So I do think in that sense it was quite realistic, but I just wanted a bit more of a showdown, and I did feel like the main character, she was, for someone who's worked in this situation before, she was quite stupid at times. Like she didn't go to the police, like she should have kept going back to the police basically. She should have like tossed the mobile phone that she got, that she was continuously getting these messages on. I don't know why she didn't just toss the phone, but she just kept onto it. And yeah, I just thought, I was like, why would you not just like throw the phone away and then you don't have to deal with this? So yeah, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars in the end. I think for what it did in terms of shining a light on abuse, it did really well. I just think in terms of a thriller, it wasn't particularly thrilling for me. The next book I read was such a huge disappointment for me. It was The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. This is a standalone sci-fi kind of horror thriller, and it's basically about this woman called, I think her name is Gear. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name, but I think it's kind of Gear. I think it's Gear, and it's basically this woman called Gear who has taken on this assignment to basically do this cave expedition completely on her own, and she doesn't really know what she's looking for, but she just knows that the person who's hiring her wants her to go down there and kind of explore the caves, and she has this like really like elaborate suit that's kind of implanted onto her body. She has things where like, you know, she doesn't have to physically eat. The suit kind of does all her living in a way for her, so it's her kind of I guess her protection from anything outside. This isn't on Earth, this is in like some sort of like mining planet, you know, in some galaxy somewhere, and we are seeing that Gear has her own motivations as to why she wants to do this expedition, why she wants to get the money to leave this planet. And then she starts talking to the person who is kind of the person who's controlling the experiment, or the expedition. Her name is and literally these are the only kind of 2 characters in the story, and they're kind of talking, they're having a conversation, and they're kind of building up this really weird relationship, because Em is definitely, she hasn't told Gear a lot of things about this expedition, a lot of things that Gear, you know, is very life-threatening for Gear, and then but there is this kind of lovely kind of relationship does form between the two of them, and they do start to care a lot about each other. The thing about this book is, I've seen so many amazing reviews, like 5-star reviews about this book, people being like, this is so creepy, like, I was like, you know, it was really scary, you know, it has a really great, like, relationship in it, and people were really, really enjoying it, like, people who I really, like normally, love their reviews, and like a lot of things that they like, and so I was really like looking forward to going into this, and then it was just so boring. This just one wasn't for me, this type of cave expedition thing, whatever it was that was going on with this book. It just was not for me at all. I didn't find things scary, and I don't know, like, I wouldn't be someone who is claustrophobic, or I don't think I've never been in a situation where I would get, I guess, become really claustrophobic, but I've never found myself feeling claustrophobic in any other situation. So it could be that because of that I didn't find what was in this book particularly scary. I'm sure if you are you don't like dark spaces, or you are claustrophobic, or in those kind of senses, you could find this very, like, you know, unsettling. But for me, it was just so blah. I just really didn't enjoy it. The only thing kind of kept me going was the relationship between Gear and Em, and even then I kind of continuously wanted more. I felt like things repeated itself a lot of the time. Like, Gear would get to this one section and then something would happen and she'd go back 3 sections and then she'd go forward, and it was like she was playing just like some weird Monopoly game where she was like 3 steps forward, or 3 steps forward, 5 steps back all the time, and it just repeated itself again and again and again, and I just was so bored, and I fell asleep reading this book 3 times, and that is just like, I don't always fall asleep reading books unless I'm very tired, but this one just continuously had me falling asleep, and I think it's because of the repetition, and I just got so bored with it. So I ended up giving it a 2.5 stars. I'm sure it might be a really good one for someone else, but for me it just completely flopped, and yeah, I must have been reading a completely different book to other people, but I just didn't like it at all. Thankfully, the next book was a really good one for me, and that was A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. This is a first book in a new series he has called The Age of Madness. I do believe it's a spin-off series to another trilogy he's had a few years ago, and this takes place I think a few years after that series, but I actually haven't read any Joe Abercrombie before, so I went into this one completely new and I found it completely fine. I didn't have to, you know, struggle with any names or history or anything like that. I felt like everything was really, really well explained. This is basically about this land, I think it's called England, but I'm not, or Angland or something like that, something very similar to England, but I'm not 100% sure if that's just like one portion of this kingdom or the whole kingdom. But we basically have this land where there is kind of outside forces coming in trying to kind of, you know, like start a proper war, but then there's also a lot of industrial unrest, and a lot of like the poorer classes are thinking about rising up against the, you know, the factory owners and the business owners and the nobles and stuff, and there's a lot of civil unrest in that sense as well. So you kind of have a kind of brewing civil war in a way, and also a outside war too. So we're kind of following 2 different wars, and we're following a few different characters. We have a character called Ricker, who is kind of, she feels like a little bit like a tribeswoman almost. She has like a ring through her nose, she has like paint over her eye, she's able to basically, she gets these fits and she's able to see flashes of like kind of premonitions in a way, so she can kind of sometimes see what's happening. She calls it the long eye. We are following Leo, who is this kind of knight. He is the governor-to-be of this section of land, and he's basically the one that's kind of leading the troops against the outside troops coming in trying to take over this land, and he's called the Young Lion. He's like someone who is, you know, very brave, very good looking, is about to go and possibly save everyone. He has a lot of ideas about himself. He's a little bit, you know, he likes to rush into things without thinking things all the time, has a very kind of domineering mother. We are following Savine, who is this noblewoman who has a lot of businesses. She's a little bit cruel in a way, very she thinks a lot, quite highly of herself, and there's things that happen in this book that basically kind of give her a slap around the face of reality and show her what the world is really like, basically. But she's someone who is, you know, you definitely want her on your side, you don't want her on your bad side. And then we are following Orso, who is the prince of this land, and Orso is a little bit, you know, he's been a little bit spoiled his whole life, he kind of gets everything he wants, but at the same time he's actually a really nice character. He was a really, really pleasant surprise for me as a character. This is mostly more, this book in particular is very much laying the lines for what's going to come in the later books, I think. Really getting to know the characters, getting to know the feelings in the land, you know, how the kingdom worked, but also there was a little bit of action, there was a bit of war, there's a little bit of romance between all the characters, which was really nice. The main things I loved about this book is how all the characters surprised me in different ways. The way Leo, like, he's so good and he's so like, he's so brave and he's so good looking, and then you actually kind of see how small-minded he can be at different points as well, and you have to kind of reread those sections and you're like, oh, did he actually say that? Like, did he actually just come across as like fairly racist there, or did I just, you know, and you know, like, and then you kind of have to rethink your ideas about him. And then you have Savine, who was like so sure of herself at the start, and you see all her kind of ideas kind of come crumbling down. You kind of want her to build herself back up again, and you have to try and see how she will do that. And you go from like I kind of like went like this with all the characters. Like, I went from really liking them and then seeing them in a different light, because you'd be seeing them from a different character's point of view, and then I'd like them again in their point of view, and then like it was just so different all the time. You'd see the characters like doing all these different things. And then my favourite character for sure was Orso, Prince Orso. He was just such a delight. He is like a real soft boy in a way, and I really loved that. When we first like met him, I was like, oh, he seems to be like, he might be another Joffrey or something, he might just be like this little spoiled brat, and he ended up just being so like kind and diplomatic, while at the same time very, you know, like he's very easily succumbed to his weaknesses, like, you know, like women and sex and alcohol and a little bit of drugs and stuff like that. So, you know, he's not perfect by any means, but you can kind of see this wonderful man should be coming out of him, this ruler that he can be someday, and he's someone that you really, really want to egg on, and I just loved him so much. I really enjoyed this book. I'm really, really excited to continue on, because the end of this book, the way this book ended, was just so good. It was one of those kind of endings, like if I could see it in a TV show, like, you know, these things happen, the whole room turns to look at this one character, and then the whole screen goes black and you have to wait for the next episode or the next movie, and I loved that. And that's what this book kind of ended like, and I cannot wait for the next ones. So I gave this a really strong 4 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it, definitely recommend it, and I can't wait to read the next one. The next book I read was Perfectly Preventable Deaths by Deirdre Sullivan. This is an Irish author, it's a really witchy, spooky book, a great one to read around Halloween time, so I'm really glad I finally picked this up. I've read some other Deirdre Sullivan's other works. I read Tangleweed and Brian, which is her short story collection, which I loved. I really enjoyed this one as well. This follows Maddie and Caitlin. Maddie and Caitlin, who are twins, and their mother has married this new man, and they've gone to live in the village where he lives. He basically lives in this castle in this village, and they go to live there, and Maddie's always kind of been the quiet one and Caitlin's always been the pretty popular one, and they get to the town and they realise that pretty and popular doesn't really mean anything in this village. The other kids, like, they're nice to them, but they're not overly friendly. They kind of struggle a little bit, and then Caitlin ends up in this relationship with this older guy, and it definitely from the start, Maddie is like, there's something not right here, I don't really agree with this, like, I just don't feel good about it. So she's kind of keeping an eye on her sister, and then she has these kind of tics, kind of almost like this anxiety tics, where she does these things and gathers all these different items. And she soon comes to realise that this is kind of a trait of witchcraft, and the village has a little bit of magic in it. One in the village basically can do a lot of different things. Witchcraft is alive in this village, and she could possibly be trained as a head witch. So she has to kind of figure out if she wants to do that or not, if she wants to give up part of her life to do this. And at the same time, she's trying to protect her sister from something that seems to be becoming more sinister and more unhealthy each day. And this is very much, you know, this is dark. This is I would do triggers for, like, I guess manipulative relationships in a way, just violence towards women, animal death, some animal cruelty at one point, which was hard enough to read, but I really, really enjoyed this one. I just thought it was very atmospheric. I liked the mother is very much involved, and the stepfather are both involved a good bit in this book. I did find with some things, with some of the older characters, I was just like, they seemed to know exactly what was going on, and they just like let it happen, and I was just like, what is wrong with you? And then same with Maddie. I think she took too long to kind of speak to her parents about what was going on between Caitlin and her boyfriend, particularly in the fact that it was so unhealthy and it seemed to be becoming abusive. So yeah, but I did really enjoy this. Deirdre Sullivan has just such a wonderful way of writing. The descriptions, the dark, misty spookiness of it all. Really, really enjoyed this. For someone who likes Hocus Pocus or something like that, this would be a great one. But yeah, it is quite gory at times. There is violence in it, but a really good one. And I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I listened to on audiobook this week to The Silver Mask by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare, and this is the 4th book in the Magisterium trilogy, trilogy series, and there's only 5, so I have 1 book left to do, which I have reserved in the library at the moment, so I'll be getting that soon. And this basically just follows on with Callum Hunt, who is this boy who basically was brought into this place called Magisterium, where he's able to learn, he knows that he is a mage, and he's able to learn all these different powers, and there is an evil sorcerer, kind of dead, kind of not, called Constantine Madden, who is basically out to rule the world, basically wreck the world, and Callum seems to be the only person that can stop him. Very Harry Potter like. A lot of people have said this, and there are a lot of similarities, but there are some differences as well. This one I quite enjoyed. I think I gave the one before a 3 stars. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. There's nothing like particularly amazing I'll say about these books. I just enjoy them, and as audiobooks they're just quite entertaining to read. And I'm really looking forward just to seeing how it all finishes up in the next book. And that's really all I can say about it. I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. Can't really say too much because it's the 4th book in the series. So, and I have 2 books left, I promise, almost finished. And that is, the next one is Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. Finally I read Practical Magic. This has been on my TBR for so long. And this basically follows these sisters called the Owen sisters, Gillian and Sally. And we are following them. They are born into this family where all the women they have aunts who are like clearly witches. They kind of have some magic in their blood, but like not really. It's more they kind of just, they grow up around magic really. And this is basically just like following their lives for a while, following them growing up, following them finding love and things, following them no matter where they go basically. This is definitely more of a story about sisters. So you have Gillian and Sally, and then you have Kylie and Antonia, I think her name is. I have like a few different sisterly relationships in this. I just really enjoy this. I really enjoy Alice Hoffman's writing. She's one of my favourite authors, and there's just something about her, the way she kind of weaves like this ordinary type of magic into real magic. Like she kind of turns ordinary life into magic, if you know what I mean. Like it's not like super duper magical. It's not like sparks and fire and all this kind of stuff. It's all these like really subtle things that's quite ordinary but become magical the way she writes it. And I feel like everything that she does is like, the magic in this was really subtle but also not so subtle at the same time. Then the loves in this were subtle but not subtle, and I really loved like the way she wrote, like kind of the way people fell in love in these books, like were very much like when it was real, it was real. It was like bam in your face. And even in some books that would be like creepy and weird, but in this book, like it was fine. It was just what was done. And I loved that. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it again to read around Halloween time. I've never watched the Practical Magic movie. I know it's very different from the book, but I am looking forward to watching that now, and I gave the book a 4 out of 5 stars. The last book I finished this week that I'll be talking about is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and this is one I've wanted to read for a few years. Finally picked it up this year, and I really enjoyed it. Was very surprised about my camera is focusing on their faces. It's quite distracting. And yeah, I was very surprised by how readable this was, how enjoyable it was. All the characters in this are very, I don't know if this is a word, but they're very ponderous. Like they ponder a lot of things, and they try and be very deep and philosophical about everything, and they definitely think they're smarter than they are as well. And I will say, like, obviously Oscar Wilde was gay, and he was obviously, I think, convicted of being gay, and he was treated in a terrible way once that was out. But this book is so gay. Like, I don't know how people at the time read this and was like, like, it's really funny. It's like, be gay in your art and in music or paintings or something, but don't be gay in real life. I feel like this is what this book was. Like, it was totally okay that they were obviously all in love with Dorian Gray, and he was definitely having like sexual relationships with a lot of men in this book. Like, it was like so undercurrent. Like, it wasn't obviously written on the page, but like you could tell it was implied. And I really enjoyed that. Like, I really enjoyed like the gay parts of this book. And he did obviously have relationships with women as well. So Dorian Gray was definitely like the bisexual demon. I wouldn't say he was a god, because obviously he's a bad person, so probably more of like the bisexual demon of nightmares. I don't know. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Different from the movie. The second half of this is much different to the movie, because I've seen the movie years ago, so I was pleasantly surprised that was different as well. So quite enjoyed this, gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and glad I read it. Everything I've read this week. Sorry, this was a very long wrap up. Hope you guys had a cup of tea or something while watching it. Let me know what you guys read this week. I would love to know, as always, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.